quickly. But suddenly I was uninvited to Christmas, uninvited to New Year's. All the plans were out of the window, and without any sort of notice, it was just over. He was like done with it. And I remember being so heartbroken. I don't think I've ever been that heartbroken. Okay, this is not working out very well. I'm getting hurt. I'm hurting people. I'm attracting same kinds of guys. And anyways, I was like, I need to break this cycle. How do I do this? Hi, my name is Dika, and you are listening to my podcast where I give you a look into my life as former business consultant, now Tantra teacher and speaker. If you're interested in self-development and really receiving the education that you should have had growing up, specifically around your femininity, sexuality, love, and relationships, then you found the right place. It's here where I share my life's journey, which once was heady, numb, unorgasmic, and basically me trying to be like a man, all while shaming and blaming anything that actually made me a woman, just blindly following the path that society set out for me, to ditching my imagined corporate career, moving my ass to Bali, setting up my business, meeting and marrying my soulmate, and becoming a Tantra teacher. I'm now on a mission to make all of this feminine and tantric wisdom that I've gathered over the past years modern, down to earth, and easily applicable. And I work with you, smart, intellectual, successful, strong, independent woman, to balance out your powerful masculine side with more softness, surrender, playfulness, love, and pleasure. Basically, enlivening and juicing up your daily and relationship life. If you're curious on how to work with me, then check out all the information in the podcast description. And for now, welcome to a new episode. In this episode, I share how to turn these drama love stories of your life where you're playing this push and pull game where there's confusion, people getting hurt, ending up in pain, and turn that instead into these soulmate, beautiful, conscious connections where both of you are coming out for the better, where you're rising into love, whether that's just with a one-night stand or a life partner. I share about my own drama love stories, which there were plenty of, and how instead I started relating to men in a conscious, beautiful way that set me up to meet my soulmate. In the end, I explained the Liberated Lover method, a framework I created on how to consciously communicate and consciously relate to create these beautiful soulmate connections. I would say grab yourself a cup of tea and enjoy. Today's episode is inspired by a conversation that I had recently with a woman who reached out about the Tantra trainings that we host and teach for couples specifically. And she was describing that actually her and her partner recently broke up, in the sense of that she was mentioning and told him, I want to split. Now, in that same conversation where she was kind of like explaining what was happening, what patterns were playing out, and the reasoning for her to step out of this connection. She was also mentioning, but probably within a few weeks, we were chatting. We probably can go on a date again, and it put kind of like a smile on my face. Because it's so interesting in general, relationship dynamics, and how we tend to play this kind of like push and pull game, where we really try hard to figure things out, to take care of ourselves, to love the other, but where things become easily messy and confusing and we don't really know what to do. But at the same time, there's this attraction and we really like each other. And so we start playing these games of like, yes, we want to be close, and no, this is confusing, I'm going to step away. And it reminded me of the way I used to relate and the kind of confusions and thoughts and questions that I would bump into in relationships, in connections, and I never really knew what to do with it until I bumped into a whole body of work, including Tantra, but also more about conscious relating, about conscious communication, which showed me a whole different world, which helped me turn my, I would say, more drama love stories into more conscious connections. And it was through this way of relating to people that the connections I was having, the intimate interactions, the sexual interactions, the dating experiences that I was having were deepening, becoming more profound, more healing and transforming, and more loving, where actually they still many of those connections are still here. The love that I shared with a person, even if it was very brief, is still here. There is still love. It's still something that if I would bump into that person on the street, we would have really fond memories and just a lot of love for each other and love to share. And through this transformation, through these kind of connections that started happening, I eventually ended up attracting and finding my soulmate. And I truly believe it was partially because of this work where I really started to look the way that I was relating and connecting to people in the eye and started creating relationships and connections that were, instead of kind of like spiraling down, so taking my energy and time, being this push and pull kind of way, and energy in communication where it was confusing, where there was no clear intention, where I wasn't sure what it meant, where I wasn't being honest myself, where they maybe weren't really honest, where there was just a whole ball of kind of mess where you kind of like spiral down, and often a connection ending up in more pain, more trauma, leaving or separating in a place where, yeah, either one of us got ignored or just kind of like faded away without clarity. And so there wasn't really a foundation of love. Where I transformed that kind of relating into connections, as I just mentioned, really established in more love, where I felt like there was this spiral up of the men and the connections that I started having, just becoming more and more profound, more and more fulfilling, more as I was always dreaming, where the connections in that way were really bringing something beautiful in, where even with some of the men that I was with, I could call them soulmate connections, soulmate experiences, where we went so profound and so deep that yes, even though we knew we probably weren't the one for each other or we weren't really suitable as life partners, we did know that by diving into this, so much more love was opened up and cultivated between us, but within our own bodies, that blueprint really served for a new caliber of men, a new caliber of relationships. And through that, attracting my beautiful husband, my beautiful soulmate, which I've been now with for almost 4 years. And even with him from the very start, diving into more understanding of how to create a conscious relationship, specifically where we really choose to spend life together, where we work together, where we travel together. And so in this episode, I want to share a little bit of my own relationship story. So what kind of connections did I have and how did that transition? And I'll be sharing and giving you a framework that I've created. It's called the Liberated Lover method, which will give you kind of a method on how to turn your drama love stories into these more conscious soulmate connections, so that instead of through relationships we just causing each other more pain, we start actually up leveling this world where when we connect with someone, we make sure it's always based in love, based in honesty, based in a sense of expansion. So we can all rise in love together, whether that's a connection of a day, whether it's a one night stand, quote, quote, or whether that's with your like long-term partner or someone that's potentially is your soulmate. And so let's zoom out, or let's, how do you say that? Rewind, go in a little bit into the past. I was, I believe, 18 years old, about to turn 19, when I got into my first real relationship. I was working at a bar at that time, and he was working there too. And I remember it took a while to really, for me to fall in love. I never really before had this like I had enough beautiful experiences with men and a lot of flirting and a lot of making out and kissing. And I had sex before that as well, but not that many partners. But I was doing all of that, but there was never been a real like relationship in my life before. There was one man where I was deeply in love with. That was also the man I had sex with for the first time, but that ended up not working out and me getting extremely hurt, extremely confused, to the point where I almost was like, just shut down my heart. Like, I'm never gonna feel this naive and stupid and just out of control again. And eventually, through being with this partner, really, getting this experience of having a boyfriend. We were eventually together for about 4.5 years. Yeah, almost 5 years. I believe like after a year and a half or so, we moved in together. So we had that whole experience of living together. And how I look back at it now and how I call it, it was beautiful, and it was exactly what I needed, what he needed. So in that way it was healing, but it was also quite a default sort of relationship. So this default mode of like, okay, both of us have an idea of understanding what a relationship is about. He asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes. So I guess here we go. And everything went well and flowed, and we moved in together until at some point it stopped kind of flowing. And then we started becoming more and more like friends, more like movie Netflix buddies, even though Netflix wasn't really a thing back then yet. Where he was working, I was busy, our schedules completely were misaligning. We maybe had like one evening a week. Like the sex started becoming less and less exciting, non-existent. All these kind of like unspoken things started to actually become an issue. And specifically, for me, at some point, I really realized that I was feeling so locked up. I started being attracted to other men. It was so confusing because I'm like, I cannot do this. I'm not allowed to be attracted to other people. I for sure cannot share that to him. It would probably like hurt him so much. But also, I have these kind of like desires, and I haven't been fully honest with him around my own sexuality in the sense of actually I've been faking orgasms, and now at this point, after so many years, like I would crush him if I would be honest. So this, like, what do I do? And so basically, as you can see, it became more and more and more dramatic, more confusing. And we were spiraling down to a place where, things just became confusing, difficult, challenging, up until the point where I really felt like I need to break free. I need to have my own space. I want to live on my own. So that was kind of like the first step that I made, the whole process that we went through. And quickly after me, like finding my own place again, it became also clear that it was ready for us to go our own ways. And it was tough. Like even the breakup, it was challenging. It was dramatic. Like we broke up in Thailand. Like officially we were kind of in that process, but the real conversation we ended up having on holidays in Thailand, where we were with a group of friends. And it was just messy. It was just shitty. That's where he finally really realized we were breaking up. He never really kind of like looked that in the eye the month and a half before. And so he crumbled into a million pieces, but here we are on holiday with mutual friends. So they were kind of annoyed that this was going on and this was happening at this point in time. And like I was planning on traveling by my own, and we had arranged that, but now basically we'd broken up there, and he would leave to home and I would travel for another 2 weeks by myself. And then we would sort things out with the house, because I kind of just left and moved, but kept all our stuff in the main house because it was just kind of an experiment. Anyways, it was messy. It was challenging. I felt like a horrible, horrible person. Now, eventually, like we sorted it out quite beautifully, and we were able to do it from a space of love. And yeah, like it wasn't sort of like a fight breakup or anything like that. Like we went through this process for a few months and took our time with it and went our own ways. But yeah, that was kind of the end. And it kind of left me in this place of like, okay, I never want to experience this again like this. But then I don't know what to do, because I was relating in the way that people, which I thought people had relationships, and I didn't really know what went wrong and how to do it differently. So I was like, well, maybe relationships or long-term relationship or like living together or monogamy is just not for me. Because this was a shit show and I don't want this to happen again. I don't want to hurt anyone else. I don't want to be hurt myself and just be in all of this kind of drama. So from that, I ended up in a phase of just kind of like casually dating. I really was like breaking free and like having one night stands and flirting with men and really sexually being quite active. But again, not in any way sort of conscious or with sort of any understanding for what I was doing now. Basically, I was just living the single life, which I thought that's how people live the single life. So, yeah, dating, and I don't know, people would kind of come and go. We wouldn't really talk with these people about anything. Sometimes it was for one time. Sometimes we would go on a few dates and it would kind of like wither away again. So this got me to a point where after I graduated and got my master's, I left to travel because I was like, I really want to travel and go backpack by myself. And so here I went off to Bali by myself, single, enjoying life. And I don't know, I might have like kissed a boy here or there. And I remember at the end of my month in Bali, I was about to fly to Vietnam. I think on the last 2 days or so, I met this Australian guy, surfer, handsome, tall, good looking, and we were flirting away. We ended up exchanging numbers, maybe making out, but that was kind of it. And I knew that in my travel plans, I would end up in Australia eventually. So we decided to stay in touch. And so for the next, like, I think month and a half or so, or 2 months, I was traveling in Vietnam and a little bit in Thailand. And the northern part of Australia, we were texting and messaging and sending photos and loving messages and kind of like starting up this sort of relationship. And he was like, you really need to come and stay with me. And I would like take care of you. And I want to introduce you to my family. And so I was in this whole living this kind of dream of like, oh, and I meet this like foreign man or boy on the other side of the world and I'll fall in love and he's a surfer and we'll get married. And not that I was really aspiring these things, but you know, this kind of like fantasy started creating itself in me, and this part of me that always desired to live a love story like that, like you see in the movies. So I was totally into it, and it was really nice because I was traveling on my own. So having that connection really gave me, this sense of like support and safety in a way, and I wasn't feeling so alone because I was connecting with this man, and he was very, very loving. And so we were doing this. Eventually, I ended up in Australia and we met there, and we had finally this meeting of coming together and rented a cute Airbnb, and we made love for the first time. And still everything seemed quite well, although I don't know, first time making love, I remember it was not that special or something. And then I came to his city and he was like, you can stay with me. And I was looking at that point, needing to find some work to make some money to continue my travels. And I was really focused on teaching yoga because I'd done a yoga teacher training just after graduating and before I left. And I thought that would be just a cool experience to teach yoga all over the world. Even though my inspiration or my aspiration was to be a strategy consultant and start that career once I came back from traveling. But anyway, so I found a yoga job, started teaching some yoga classes. He was, just supporting me, driving me around, helping me get to know the city and the country, kind of living with him. And we were living in this like garage because he was living with some friends, but they had the house, but he had then the garage room or something. Quite shitty. But yeah, we were doing that thing. And after a few weeks, I was like, I think it's good for me to just find my own place. Because I don't know, it started to become also again a little bit weird. But he was like, you're coming to Christmas with my family. I want to introduce you to my family. But here we've never had a proper conversation on anything. So again, we started this kind of relationship, this connection. He didn't really ask like, do you want to be my girlfriend? But we were living together and I dove right in and he seemed to dive right in. And it was, okay, so then I'll stay longer in this town instead of continuing my travels. And I like working here. I like you. So I'll find my own place and we continue. And literally, I found my own place. Within a few days, he basically just broke up with me. There was like one text message. I think he still came to talk quickly, but suddenly I was uninvited to Christmas, uninvited to New Year's. All the plans were out of the window, and without any sort of notice, it was just over. He was like done with it. And I remember being so heartbroken. I don't think I've ever been that heartbroken. And it was super weird because it wasn't like in that moment, it felt like my whole fantasy, this whole love fantasy bubble that I was living in, that part of me just like crumbled. So I felt like not just a heartbreak around this person, but just a heartbreak around a certain kind of reality that I thought could be true, or that I was trying to live in some sort of fantasy land. And so suddenly here I was about to be alone for Christmas, alone in a foreign country, other side of the world, no friends. It was such a fucking slap in the face. Very challenging moment in my life. And so from there I was like, okay, it's like something gotta change the way that I relate. But I still wasn't fully listening. So I ended up continuing my travels. I have some family in Australia in the south. So I ended up spending Christmas there, not by myself. Found another yoga teaching job, got on Tinder, started like Tindering around, having some dates, which was really cute, and ended up for another few weeks seeing a guy, which had quite like a similar imprint as my previous partner that I was with for 4.5 years, in the sense of same kind of characteristics, way of being, me having all these kind of like crazy plans and dreams and ambitions, and him also, but kind of like having a little bit lost of sense of direction, a little bit more feminine in his way, but we were dating. And okay, I was going to Bali. I was like about to head out and do another training there, and so like he was also wanting to travel. I think he wasn't originally from Australia, but Canada or something. And so we ended up having this plan of like, okay, you come to Bali at some point, come and visit me there. And then I don't know, I think we were going to co-work somewhere where I would teach yoga and he would do some design work. And we arranged this whole opportunity with this yoga school in Bali somewhere, and making all these plans together. Again, without like a real clear intention of what this was all about, but just like we were having a great time in that moment and thought, okay, let's do this. And I wasn't fully honest with myself. So here I end up in Bali, having the time of my life. This training that I was in was life-changing. I was rolling into experiences as ecstatic dance and workshops around conscious relating, communication, tantra, sexuality. Had like these different men that came onto my path that were more into open relating and dating. And it was just like a whole new world. And I was totally mesmerized and blown away, and kind of completely forgot about this guy until a few weeks later. He was basically coming to Bali for me. And I was like, feeling so locked up. And I was like, I cannot do this. I cannot be in this. And so it ended up again turning into something really messy. This time, it was me more hurting him, in the sense of he was really, really hurt. And now he had kind of like changed his life around and set up this thing and traveling to Bali for me. And I basically told him once in Bali of like, I cannot be with you. Like, I remember like the moment we met, and I just was repulsed by him, and the idea of like having sex with him or being intimate with him was like, I just couldn't. And so it was of course very confusing to him, because here we had been leading up to seeing each other again. Oh my God, it was just a mess. And it was after this that I really, really understood, where I'm like, okay, this is not working out very well. I'm getting hurt. I'm hurting people. I'm attracting same kinds of guys, because even the Australian surfer guy was similar in a sense of a little bit lost for direction, little feminine in a certain way. And anyways, I was like, I need to break this cycle. How do I do this? Now, at this point, I basically fell and bumped into this body of work around conscious dating, and was meeting these people which had open relationships, and they would speak to me like when they would go on a date about their other partner or about their wife and their kid. And it was just, to me, so fascinating. I was like, wait, this is something you can talk about. And they would talk about attractions and, I don't know, potential intention or boundaries they were having, or the meaning this connection could have. And I was just like blown away with the fact that this was something people would talk about with each other, that you would openly share, you would be with someone. And so it really opened my eyes to a different way of relating. And so here I ended up diving into more open relating, open dating. Also there I bumped into like other issues around like, yeah, not really feeling like committing because now things were unclear. But at the same time, what that phase taught me, what I started learning here was really to start communicating. And I was taught a framework, and through that also my own experience added more different components and an understanding of how to create connections, how to make it a little bit more conscious, and how to potentially support each other in coming out better than worse out of a connection, even when they were potentially short-lived and we weren't really looking like, yeah, to find a life partner or something like that. So when I analyze and look at these more drama love stories that I was having, what was missing was a lack of communication, a lack of openness, lack of honesty, a lack of clarity, a lack of intention and meaning. And without that foundation, basically, all these connections which were initially rooted in an attraction, in this like, ooh, this fire, this desire, something passionate that gets sparked, they would just like burn basically at the end. And there's this beautiful saying in Tantra where we talk about like paying attention in lovemaking to the fire, and to really meditate and to be aware of that, to avoid the embers at the end. I don't know the exact quote, like literally, but basically what it describes is when there is an attraction, when there is that initial fire, that polarity, that desire, it's important to meditate with that, to basically bring awareness into that, to make sure that you can ride that beautiful wave of fire, that you can play with it, but to avoid the embers at the end. The embers basically meaning everything burns down and goes to shit. And I feel like many of us these days are relating and dating in this kind of like way where we just have attraction and fire. And so then we're like, oh, this is exciting. We jump right in. It's like, oh, this is a fun game. Let's play with fire a bit. And then at some point, everything crumbles and burns down, and it ends up in more pain. And yeah, it's like there's nothing much left. And so what we need to do is like, okay, when there is an attraction, when there is that fire, can we bring more awareness into it? Can we meditate with it to really understand how to play with it, how to use that fire for healing, for transformation, for pleasure, for creativity. And in that way, so to avoid the embers in the end, to make sure that the fire doesn't turn into like uncontrollable something that burns everything to shit again. And instead using the fire for this alchemy, this transformation of the energy, and trying to understand, like almost like it unravels and something gets revealed of what's the true intention, the true meaning of the fire that was here, of the polarity. And with this, it's an interesting way to look at connections and attractions with people, something I apply in my life right now, having a relationship, but also understanding that there will always be attractions to other people, because through attraction, we move through life. Like it's basically the attraction force, like two opposites, two magnets that create a pulse of life. And that's how we constantly actually are in movement, and we move through life because we're following the attraction. Oh, I'm attracted to a country. Oh, I'm attracted to this kind of work. Oh, I'm attracted to this kind of person. So it's the driving force behind our human experience. And I've learned to bring more meditation into it and to start, okay, wait, there is an attraction to someone. Instead of just kind of like equaling fire or attraction means sex, it's like, what could this mean? What could this point to? Because an attraction could mean, yes, you are supposed to be life partners, but an attraction could also mean you're supposed to create something together, or heal something together, or transform or inspire each other, which can look in many different ways. It doesn't have to look, okay, we need to have sex now and make out. It might look as, okay, we just need to have a really deep, profound dance, or a beautiful conversation, or a hug. It could mean many things. And starting to apply this to attractions can avoid so much drama because in this way, we start to understand that there's nothing wrong with attraction to begin with. Whether you are single or in a relationship, like again, attractions are normal. And when we bring this more meditation and awareness into it, we get to fully understand and actually see what it's about. So learning to slow down is one of the principles that I would recommend that I've learned. So instead of just attraction, ooh, excitement, and you jump right into the game, it's like, okay, whoa, attraction, woof, like kind of like zoom out and slow down and really enjoy this journey of trying to figure out what this attraction is trying to tell you. Let's take it a little bit slower. And so I believe these days we can benefit a lot from actually taking it a little bit slower, and through that avoiding these embers at the end, through that avoiding that our love stories and connections and attractions turn into some sort of drama play and game. Now, what is important for this also is actually to ask yourself, are you ready to let go of drama? Because I believe secretly many of us are quite addicted to drama. We love the drama. We love watching drama movies. We love watching these rom-coms where it goes well and then goes bad and goes well again. And so when we look at the imprint and something that excites us and what we get, it is the drama love stories. And if we decide to say no to that, if we decide to be like, okay, I don't want drama, then what is there? Then, okay, maybe there are going to be connections that are more relaxing, more slowing down, calming, where the pace is different, where it's like a slow unpacking. And so there might be less ups and downs and craziness and excitement and tension. And like there might be just a more calming feeling to it all. And so then the question is, is that something you dare to choose, basically? Because it's in a way easier to stay in the drama than to really shine light and openness and vulnerability on a connection, and to really dive into the core of what's there, because that often requires us to unravel certain pieces within ourselves and to open up and to feel, instead of just kind of like play around on the surface. So good for yourself to answer this question. Are you ready to let go of the drama? Now, at the same time, what you can also do is just being like, okay, part of me just wants to play out still some drama patterns. We have that in our relationship. We do that sometimes, but we do it in a conscious way. So we bring meditation into it. We play it out. We're aware of it, but let's act these pieces out of ourselves that clearly just want to fight sometimes, that clearly sometimes just want to hang up the phone and say, fuck you, or want to slam the door and be like, I want to be right. And so it's not to say that if you say like, okay, I give up on drama, that part of you shouldn't exist, but it mainly means that if you give up on drama to run the show, then you say yes to more of that awareness consciousness, and therefore shining light on these pieces and playing with it in a healthy way, so it can be transformed, and you start creating connections which are just rising both of you and yourself in love. Now, besides the things I've just mentioned, what really helped me was a sort of like communication framework. I call it the Liberated Lover method, and I teach this also to women. And it really helped me to understand relationships more, how to create connections that, as I just mentioned before, help you rise in love, but that also feel like have a clear beginning and an end, which have a deeper meaning to it, whether it's a short connection or a long connection, that doesn't really matter, but that really prepare you for only more and more and more love, and that activate more and more and more love in your life and in your body. And so the Liberated Lover method is consisting out of a number of different components. So I'll quickly and briefly describe and how I applied this in my life. So basically, when I entered this field of more open relating and open dating, I started working a lot on my communication. And so that would look that I would talk about certain topics before just diving into bed together, before having sex, and before even really starting a sort of like dating or connection or relationship. So in those first few dates, I would talk and bring up subjects around relationship status. So I learned that, okay, there's such a thing as open relationship, monogamous relationships, all kinds of different things and ways in which people relate. So let's talk about this. So some of these components actually were also taught to me in workshops, in like conscious communications, conscious sex parties, similar kind of frameworks, tantric teachings or tantric workshops. These different kind of components were taught and used as a framework as well. So relationship status is one of those. So talking about, okay, are you currently in a relationship? Are you seeing anyone? If so, would you like to share? Do they know that you're dating other people? How do you work? What do you desire in the type of relationships that you're looking for? So making this subject open to discuss and talk about what other connections are there as well. If there's anyone else in the field, how we would like to call it back then. Basically, who is in this person's energy field, in this relationship field, so that if you dive into this connection or if you step in, then knowing that, okay, then I'm actually also connected to this person because they're dating this person, or like these are the agreements they have with their wife or whatever is there. It's always really good to know and to talk about. Another of those subjects would be around sexual status. So like one is relationship status, the other one more sexual status, or talking about STIs. Like, so just basically sexual health status. When was the last time you were tested? Have you ever had STIs? If so, which ones? Maybe how did it happen? Let's have a conversation. Let's make this not so shameful. It's important that if we potentially get really intimate, that we understand that we know, that we feel safe with each other, but also talking about, okay, protection, like I'm off the birth control pill. Do we use condoms? This is how I track my cycle. How are you around like managing and understanding your ejaculation, and how connected are you to your body? So having open conversations on this and deciding on like, okay, if we really want to be intimate, what do we use? So in that way, what you stop avoiding is, for example, that you're, okay, here you are making out and you're getting more intimate and maybe about to have sex. And then there's this moment of like, do we not, condom, not condom. And then now eventually maybe you do it without a condom and the next day you feel shitty. I've been in that situation countless of times before. And I always like was hitting my head of like, why did this happen? Because then in the moment you get just swooped away. Then it becomes more difficult and challenging to talk about these things. And so if you talk about these things beforehand, it's more clear, there's agreements made and it's easier. And so besides like relationship status, sexual health status, or STIs and sexual protection and things like that. Also talking about boundaries, around fears, around desires. So, okay, what are your boundaries? Like maybe if we want to get more intimate, a boundary is like penetration. I don't want to go for penetration. Or maybe we don't even like get naked to this point. Like my boundary is up until kissing, or we don't even kiss. Again, it could be anything. And you have to tune in and get to know yourself and understand, okay, how do you want to play this game? But you can set and create the container. And the same for then expressing your desires, where the boundary is kind of like, okay, where is the no? The desire is like, okay, where is the yes? So what am I desiring with this person? Is that to hold hands or to cuddle, or I don't know, to do something super kinky and get tied up? Again, it could be anything, but really tuning in of like, okay, what's here in between us? What wants to be played out? Maybe the desire is to dance together. Maybe desire is to create together. Like I once had a connection with a man and we really felt this like, I don't know, kind of artistic, creative connection. It was also sexual and there was that, but there wasn't this like, okay, we really need to have sex. We were also having beautiful conversations. And so we ended up creating this beautiful container and experience where we were kind of like, I think it was with a charcoal body paint, and he had a canvas, and we were like rolling around and dancing because we really were having a beautiful dance connection. And I don't know, that we had set a boundary of like, we're not having actual penetration or sex, but anything else could like unfold. There's just this desire to create. And we had this magical, like really deep, profound experience together. Which like really, it wasn't also necessary to penetrate. Like even if we would have done that, I feel it would have kind of like made it again more confusing, and it wouldn't have added anything to the experience itself. So desires, but also expressing fears, like what are vulnerabilities, like what works really well in connections. If you want to create true connections, is to open up, to be vulnerable, to express potential fears that you're having. That, okay, I have this desire, but I'm at the same time also a little bit afraid of this. So I have this like really kinky desire, but I'm afraid that maybe once I get there, that it's going to be painful, or that I actually don't want it, or that I'm going to feel ashamed about myself, or anything. And so I would bring in and talk about all of these subjects. Two other subjects, important and beautiful to talk about, is called, one is meaning. So talking about the meaning, the intention. So, okay, is the meaning that we have this attraction, we go on dates with potentially figuring out if we are each other's life partners and doing life together because that's what I'm looking for? Or, hey, I'm actually just looking for a one-time thing. I'm traveling around and that's kind of all I can give right now. It's like, okay, so this is a different kind of meaning. Is the meaning I want to get kids and get married? Is the meaning I just want to have some fun? What is the intention? So yeah, like talking and opening up about these things to see if you're actually aligned. Because a lot of drama gets created because we don't understand the intention, the meaning of each other. And so one person is running one script, the other person is running another script, until at some point we figure out, oh, our scripts are not the same, but now we're all sexually already entangled and have all these emotions and all of these feelings and all of these like even hormonal connections that are being formed because we had sex and fluid bonding. And so that's where it then turns out dramatic and painful and hurtful, which is something that could have been prevented if we would have talked about this from the start. And lastly, a beautiful subject to talk about with someone, specifically if you're planning on being sexually like sexual with this person, or just really intimate, or having a beautiful, profound experience, is around aftercare. So what do you need afterwards? Do you need him to message you the next day and just say a thank you or check in of how you're doing? Do you want to sleep together afterwards? Does he stay over? Do you stay over? Again, do we like meet in a week and just talk about what happened or how we're feeling? Again, could be anything, but it can be very beautiful and clear, or beautiful to get clear on what you need is aftercare. So that instead of the next day being like, oh, he doesn't text me, should I text him? All these mismatched expectations, and they become painful or hurtful or confusing or create some sort of drama, or like, oh, he's messaging me like maybe he wants more and I told like I don't want this. And again, all of these things, and I'm pretty sure that you will recognize some of these patterns, however that plays out in your life, can be avoided if we just discuss openly around aftercare. And so basically what I would start doing is talk about all of these things and basically create a container. So you could see this attraction, the fire, the sexuality is this feminine, like something alive, something wants to be created out of this connection of two people meeting. And can we create this kind of like masculine safety, this container, this foundation for that to play itself out? And also really learning that an experience starts, you kind of like open the space, then something happens, and it's important to also close an experience, close that connection properly. Otherwise, that kind of like feminine energy, that fire, it will start leaking out and take over. So really learning to close of connections. I remember having an experience with a man at some point, and we were seeing each other for a few weeks. It was in Bali, but he was traveling, and so he was leaving again. And it was such a beautiful connection, and we talked about many of these things openly, like where we're at in our life and what we're wanting. And yes, somewhere we were both open to deeper relationship and connection, but at the same time, I was really living in Bali, he wasn't, and it wasn't like we just had this openness in that. But also he was leaving. And so what I guided and what I made sure is that we closed off the container. And so that meant that, okay, for now, we're going to be separate and apart. So let's close off these few weeks that we had together to just to really honor what we shared, because we shared so much love and so many beautiful moments and so much pleasure. So let's ground it. Let's honor it. And so that can look in many different ways. I believe at that point we were holding hands and doing some eye gazing and some breathing together, but also expressing gratitudes and sharing learnings and insights that we had from this experience and thank yous. And we basically thanked each other for this and then really said, okay, for now we close this experience. And then from here, let's see what happens next. And from that, eventually we kind of just ended up drifting, or not drifting apart because we set this clear end, but we kind of never really properly came together in the sense of it felt really okay for then. And we shared much love and we ended up seeing each other like 8 months later or something. And it was beautiful. And at that point, I was actually starting to connect with Modestus, my current partner. And it just felt like, that wasn't in flow in the sense of, again, a new cycle with him would be created. It felt like what we had there was just perfect, but still feeling this sense of love. And even now I could call him up or send him a message and I'm pretty sure it's going to be received super well. And I have that with many of those connections from that time where it's really applying these principles, where these men are really true, not friends in the say of we're connecting on a daily, but just there's still love. The love is there. And I could see them now and we would be in a beautiful space, have a beautiful conversation, and also just really feel look back at that was just really beautiful what we shared. And also feeling like this is not anymore there, or doesn't have to another continuation. That was it. That was beautiful. That supported us in the way that we needed in that moment. So basically starting to apply these topics of communication, this understanding of creating more clarity and of a framework is essential to make sure that you stop having these drama love stories and instead start having these soulmate connections, which only become this upward spiral of you rising and rising and rising into love. And if you're desiring potentially to attract your soulmate partner or your life partner, then this will form that foundation because you're practicing. Because if you want to hold a soulmate kind of love, or really have that deep, profound, conscious relationship with someone where you share life, what you need is an understanding and an experience of what a healthy relationship is all about, how to communicate, how to connect, how to open up, how to be vulnerable. All of these skills are not something that we have in general been taught. And so we don't have much experience with that. And so the only way, or in which I see how I got really prepared to hold this really big soulmate love and to do this deep, profound work now also together during the soulmate training, is because I was having this foundation and this rising of my skills of relating, of creating more and more love and practicing communicating, practicing opening up, practicing bringing more of that awareness into relationships, even though they were short-lived or were short-term. That doesn't really matter. So I hope that this inspires you, to open up more, to start communicating, to start creating more clarity, and that way create more of a foundation of love for the dating experiences or relationships that you're having, because this framework can also be used in your current relationship. Because if you're not talking about these things right now, but having sexual interactions, you could still talk with your partner around, okay, what is the meaning at this point of our relationship? What is aftercare? What are your desires, fears, boundaries? Let's, maybe you have a desire to spice things up or to do something differently. Okay, it's important to talk about that, because without it, you're probably just going to get disappointed. And at some point being like, okay, this is not happening with this partner, and then getting all confused and potentially are going to look for it outside of the relationship. And then someone is going to get hurt, or you're going to get hurt, or you see where this is going. So I'd hope it inspires you to become more open to start practicing this skill and to start practicing this meditative awareness into the way you connect, into the way you relate, into the way that you have sex or are intimate with someone, because it will change your life and it will change the other person's life. And it will just start kind of like creating this foundation of love in the entire world, instead of just where we keep on hurting and creating more pain. And if you're curious to really understand and get a deep dive around the Liberated Lover method, how to apply it, how to put it into use, how to embody, how to meditate on your desires or on attractions, as I was describing, then I have some exciting news, because I am creating a beautiful place called the Feminine Legacy Academy, where I gather all of this wisdom that I've gathered over the past years around relationship, around love, around sexuality, around femininity. I'm gathering it all together in one place. And this academy is really designed to give you that solid foundations of teachings of life skills around relationships, around men, around being a woman that you never got, that we all should have gotten. And this is going to be the place. So for now, you can put yourself on the wait list of the Feminine Legacy Academy. And if you're on the wait list, you're going to be the first to know more, to get the chance to grab a spot and to understand how it's all exactly going to look, and what it means. So the link to that, to the wait list, you can find in the podcast description. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Now, before you tune out, if you felt inspired, enjoyed listening, had some beautiful insights, I would really highly appreciate it if you could leave me a 5-star review or share the episode with a friend or on your social medias. Also, as always, please feel free to reach out to me with any questions or anything you would like to share. You can do so on my Instagram at Dieketerweel. That is DIEKETERWEEL. Also, if you're curious on how to work with me, then make sure to check out the information in the podcast description. And for now, I hope to see you in the next one.